What is up, everybody? Escape211 here, and we are going to be doing another best loadouts video. And this time we're going to be focusing on the new mech, Arachnos, because we have access to all the stuff on the test server, so I got to try everything out, which has been really nice. Arachnos is definitely more of a defensive mech. He is about area denial with his spider turret. This is really nice for zone control. Primarily, this is a CPC-based mech where you're going to be controlling capture points. So we're going to focus mainly on that. Of course, there are going to be instances where this is nice in team deathmatch, where you're going to be able to control lanes or certain areas too, but the primary focus, at least for this, is going to be CPC, because I think that's going to be his best application. So with that in mind, let's get started here. And we're going to start, like always, with the early game. When you first get Arachnos, he will have 16 energy, which is pretty solid. This is usually the starting point for any mech being useful. So whether you get them early, late game, or you got them through the event, free, whatever it'll be, 16 energy is what he starts at, so it's pretty solid. But we want to talk about some options there, and the first one would be, in my mind, would be dual long arm 8. Now, like I said, this is primarily a CPC mech, and that usually means that you have 3 different beacons that you usually want to capture. 2 of them I consider the home beacons, which are closest to you and easy for you to cap, and then the center beacon, or usually the highly contested one that you and the other team are fighting over. So this is more of a long-range sniper damage or support style build that you're going to want to do from one of those home beacons. You're not really going to want to encounter your enemy directly too much at the center. You don't want to be close. The long arm 8s are not a close-up weapon. Typically what I like to do is put my turret down near where the home beacon is that I am defending, or like near both of them if they're close together, and then I either back up or find some cover near the side so that when enemies get close and they encounter, my turret can get in their face, and then I can stand further away or put some distance between us and get those long range shots in. Otherwise though, you're going to be trying to look down sights on the map to get as much support damage and as many kills as you can from a long distance. Ultimately, this is about less encounters and more about long range damage. Alright, now we're going to do one that's going to get more into that contested or the center beacon, and this is a build I actually don't often recommend or would normally recommend for Arachnos, but it's actually one that's in his progress path. So this is more of a suppression fire or support style build. This is one where you're not going to want to directly be in combat, but you can get a safer distance or behind cover to provide good support fire for your teammates, and that's usually best in this contested area where your other teammates are going to be up in the front and you will not be the focus, so you can get that long range 60 meters damage. Of course, you can use the carbines here or some other style of support suppression build, but I pick the pulse cannons here largely because of the nice optimal range that it has and because it's related to your progress path. But yeah, you're not going to want to directly engage guys. He is squishy and he's slow, so you're going to want to try to use cover to the best of your advantage to provide that support fire for your team, and then be able to drop your turret to protect you and your guys as best as possible. Next up, we have another build that's going to be more about getting into that center or the contested beacon, but this one I think will work a little bit better. This is the dual missile rack 8. Now obviously with the dual missile rack 8, you're going to do more of that burst damage. You're going to play a lot of peekaboo with this style of build. But what's nice about this one is, you know, just because of the nature of how burst damage works, you'll be able to get out, do a lot of damage, get behind cover, and keep Arachnos safe, because like we've said, he's pretty darn squishy. So what I like to do for this typically is that I like to pop out, drop my spider turret, drop some damage, and then get back behind cover when the opportunity warrants it. There are going to be instances sometimes where you may need to pop out longer to re-secure the center beacon or the contested beacon if you need to, but obviously you're going to want to do that when there's not much action going on, because like we said, he can't take much. So ultimately you're going to want to do that, pop out, do all your damage, set your turret, and then get back behind cover to be the most effective you can with this build. Alright, now we're going to shift back to more of a home beacon based build that's going to be more long range. This is the long range rocket support style build, and this is one that's going to be really comfortable, I think, for Arachnos, and if you saw the spotlight on him, they talked a lot about these style of builds. This is the Rocket Mortar 12 with the Javelin 4. Now, again, this is 16 energy, so this is the most we can put on at this state. There are obviously a lot of variations you can use here, where you do Rocket Mortar 10s with the Javelin 6, or you could do dual Javelin 6s, or you could do dual Rocket rocket mortar 8s. But this is one that I think tends to pair the best at covering multiple ranges, especially if something gets too close. You can do a little bit of damage with those javelins, as well as one that works better because a lot of people focus more on the rocket mortar 12s long term than they do the 8s or the 10s. So I think this one is going to be the best long term for you as you get further down in your progress path or other builds with him. Ultimately though, what you want to do is try to find situations where you can drop your turret at the forward or the closest home beacon to where you are, and then back up or get to a safer position where you can just rain down on the enemy and provide that rocket support for your team. Pretty safe build to do, and one that, like in the instance I have here, I'm able to get good range and sight lines on all my enemies, as well as keeping myself safe, but one where I can drop my turret down easily as they come down this path here. So these type of setups are ideally what you're going to want for CPC to maximize what Arachnos can do. So that covers the main builds that I use in the 16 energy bracket. So now let's move over to the mid game. Mid-game I classify now as 20 to 24 energy since we have the energy changes. And to start off, we're going to do a variation on the earlier sniper build we have. This is the dual long arm 10 build. Now, what's nice about this one is that the long arm 10s do a little bit more damage close up. So instead of being a backline or just the home beacon sniper, you can be more of a roaming sniper here. It gives you a little more flexibility, which is nice. You definitely don't want to engage people up close because, as we know, this guy's squishy, and the long arm 10, of course, does better at long range and will do more damage. So you want to mostly focus on long range, but this is one where you can kind of float between that home beacon and the center if you need to give your team more backup. So this is a nice and pretty flexible loadout that you can do at the 20 energy mark. If you're looking for a more flexible build in terms of how you do damage and providing some support and being able to roam around on the map, this is a great build for that. This is the Stasis Beam 12 with the Missile Rack 8. I like to call this the Roaming Support Spider. Pretty simple name for it, pretty straightforward. But, you know, that's really what you're going to want to be doing. You're going to be able to move about the map pretty well and be able to engage long to mid range pretty well also, as well as providing some decent damage. Now, I've done this build before with other higher energy mechs or ones that have more health with like Guardian, and it allows you to step out a little bit more. You're going to want to do more corner shooting and be a little more cautious with Arachnos because he's squishy, but this is definitely one that can work for him. You also want to try to follow the flow of battle. If there are too many targets in one area, don't be afraid to back up, and then when there's less targets there, you can push in. You want to follow that flow, but like I said, this is a roaming build, so you can go where you and your team need the help for either support or just taking down targets. All right, this one is just going to be a variation on the long-range rocket support. So I don't know, should I call this long-range rocket support 2.0? I don't know. You guys, if you have a better name for it, feel free to leave in the comments. But this is really just an upgraded version of that rocket mortar javelin build before. Here we have the rocket mortar 12 with the javelin 6. Now, I am only utilizing 18 energy here, and obviously, yes, this is 20. So if you wanted to do something else where you're using like a rocket mortar 8, if yours is good, you can certainly do that here. I only went with this because these are two weapons that I actually have invested more into. Most people don't invest too much in the rocket mortar 8 and the 10, like I said previously. And this one, again, allows you to have that flexibility between, you know, closer up targets and further away. So you have a nice range flexibility between both of these weapons. It's why a lot of people couple this with kill shot as well. So it'll function a lot of the same way as the other one before. Again, you want to put your turret forward, move back, and then be able to engage targets probably from the back of the map and those home beacons. That's usually where this shines the most. And now we're moving to the 24 energy slot. We are still mid-game, but this is where things start to get interesting. 24 energy used to be end-game, so this should be comfortable or familiar for a lot of us. And we're going to start out with a pretty familiar build. This is the Thanos build. This is the Long Arm 8 and the Railgun 16. A lot of people run this for end-game for a lot of other mechs, and it also works well here for Arachnos. This is going to be, I would say, the heavy sniper or heavy roaming sniper actually type of build. This is one where now that you have the Railgun with you and it has really good max range up to 120 meters, but also like 0 to 120 meters, which is insanely huge. It allows you a lot of flexibility to get closer to your targets if you need to. So you should be able to, if you have to be at home beacon, you can be at home beacon, but you can also get more up in the front into that contested space as well. So this gives you a lot of flexibility for that. One where, again, you probably want to put your turret a little bit more forward and then pull back if it warrants it, but you really, again, can flow the action or follow the flow of action in the battle and do really well with this build. Next, we got a fairly familiar build again at that 24 energy range. This would be the heavy Alpha Strike build, and we've traded in one of our missile racks for the Railgun. So we got a missile rack 8 and a Railgun 16 to do that. This is again one where you want to be closer to that middle or contested area, and one where you should be able to provide a lot more damage to take down targets quicker because you got the Railgun in tow. But it's going to play very similar, where you're going to pop out, put down the turret, and then back behind cover as best as you can, or when you can, and when the situation warrants it. Now we got a variation on the roaming support spider, so I guess this would be roaming support spider 2.0, but this is one that will feel very familiar. The only difference here is we got a stasis beam 16. So this is the stasis beam 16 with the missile rack 8, so it'll feel very familiar to that other build. Again, very flexible, allowing us to be at multiple ranges where you can mix between the contested and home beacon and deal with targets from all different ranges. Very flexible. The benefit, I would say, of this one is that it's a little more budget friendly, just because the stasis beam 16 is generally cheaper to get, and then I think even maintain a little bit than the stasis beam 12. So if you skip the other one, this might be one to consider, just because not only is the stasis beam stronger and more damaging in the 16 variant, but it's also a little bit cheaper to get and then maintain. Now we got a build that's probably going to be one of the more solid, I would say, for Arachnos. This is the dual rocket mortar 12, what I call the heavy rocket support. As said in his mech spotlight, he is at home with the rocket mortar, so this is definitely one that you're going to feel comfortable with. You can play back line, or primarily you're going to play back line and then move up a little bit as needed, but you're mostly going to play the back field, and you're going to want to stay, I would say, you know, within that 100 meters or maybe even less from the targets when you can, and try to pick off targets to help your team. You can move forward to place down your turret where it makes sense to give you best protection, but it's one where you're mostly going to stay back and have the I think the best scenario you can with this as a rocket support mech. Those are the primary ones I use at 24 energy, so let's move on to the late game. Now, when we're talking about the heavy mechs, we have a new late game, and that is the 28 to 32 energy. Now, this is new space for all of us, still pretty fresh to me, so I'm probably not going to hit all the new builds and all this stuff. There's a lot of people still working on this stuff, but I'm going to mention a couple that I really like, and you can feel free to comment with some below. But the first one that I really enjoy lately has been the Rocket Mortar 12 with the Railgun 16, and I call this the ultimate range build. This means really that any range on the map you should be able to handle, which is super nice. You can get further away with the rocket mortars and then up close with the Railgun, and you can dominate pretty strongly with either of these weapons. They're both really good, really strong, and super effective at all ranges. Really nice for Arachnos, just because, again, he doesn't like to engage close up, and that Railgun really covers those areas where he normally wouldn't like to engage. And then, of course, he's got the Railgun too. So really solid for him. I really like this one a lot. And lastly, at the 28 energy mark, we have a new build that I like to call the Arctic Spider. This is a cool build, and this is the Stasis Beam 12 and the Stasis Beam 16. This is one we were not able to do before, and having these heavier weapons together means you're freezing stuff a lot faster. What's really cool about this build is that it's nice for a lot of different ranges, and it's one where if you're in the contested area especially, and your target is focusing on other enemies, you can freeze them quickly, and they'll have less time to even turn or retaliate to deal with you. So it's great for getting those unaware targets of your presence, and it's nice because you can do that from a pretty safe distance. So there's a lot of nice damage and flexibility with this build. You'll also find that you get a decent amount of kills as well as support type of functions for your team, and it's really good at keeping the enemy at bay, especially for that contested beacon, if you can cycle between targets and keep freezing them. So it's got a lot of great function for the team, as well as a lot of great flexibility, so a really enjoyable one. It's also really easy to pilot, so definitely give this one a shot. And that is going to be it for the video, guys. And I know some of you are thinking, wait a minute, Scape, you did not cover the actual 32 energy, all right? So, yeah, I've definitely been playing with some of the 32 energy builds, but quite honestly, you guys, I don't think Arachnos is worth 32 energy yet. Like we've said before, there are only really 3 builds that will maximize 32 energy. That's dual Railgun, dual Stasis Beam 16, and then a Railgun with a Stasis Beam 16 like I have here. And these type of builds, I think, are going to be better served on some other mechs, like a Guardian or a Panther, if you really want to go that route. But if you're not going to do that, I think the 28 builds that he has are already pretty stellar. Now, obviously, that could change as we get more heavy weapons in the future, or if you guys think that those are much better than some of the variants you could do or the same type of builds you could do on Panther and Guardian, feel free to let me know. But that is just my thoughts on what I think are going to be the best builds and the best investment for you guys with Arachnos. So I hope you guys enjoyed the video, but as always, we will see you out there on the battlefield.